we've had formal announcements of, you can call it retirement, you can call it mutually agreeing to part ways, mutually agreeing to move on, whatever you want to call it. Pete Carroll, Seattle Seahawks head coach, mutually agreeing to kind of part ways or move on. Nick Saban, mutually, well, not even that, not as much of a mutual sort of agreement or whatever you want to call it. However, he retired. He's done coaching. And then most recently, as of today, January 11th, this early morning, Bill Belichick and the Patriots, Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, mutually agreeing to part ways. 3 legendary championship caliber head coaches all agreeing to basically stop coaching. You can define it as, like I said, mutually agreeing to part ways with the organizations. You can define it as retiring. Sounds like, at least in Pete Carroll and Nick Saban's case, they're still going to be around the team, the organizations that they were previously coaching, at least helping out through the transitionary period and potentially becoming some sort of advisor in some degree, some sort of situation where they're going to be around. And I like that. It makes it seem like these guys aren't just, up and dry, gone and done, going to leave everybody hanging. They're not. I don't having a hard time from a grand scale trying to define what happened with these coaches. And I don't mean in a negative or positive way, but for me, Pete Carroll retiring or moving on from coaching with the Seahawks, Nick Saban retiring, Bill Belichick moving on from coaching signifies more than anything just the end of an era. It's the end of an era in the world of football. You don't have any coaches anywhere in the sport that are as wise, as successful, for lack of a better term, as old as those 3 guys. And if you combine the championship caliber experience, the championships themselves, the contributions to the sport of football, just from those 3 guys that have moved on from coaching in the last week, Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, without those 3 guys in the sport of football, the entire sport would be way worse off. Those 3 guys, hesitate to say, but I'm confident in this claim, transformed the sport we know as football, both professionally and at the collegiate level. Pete Carroll did both. Nick Saban did both. Saban's success in the NFL, not quite. But if you combine all the contributions to the sport, all the championships, all the success, the impacts from Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, and Bill Belichick, football would be in a way worse place without those 3 guys. And the combination of contributions from those 3 transformed the sport of football as we know. And it signifies the end of an era for a lot of people, no matter the age, that were able to experience what the sport of football was like when those 3 guys were in their prime, at their peak, contributing at a high level from a coaching perspective. Pete Carroll at USC, and then on the Seahawks. Nick Saban in the early parts of his career, going into the NFL, not having as much success, transitioning to college, and just flat out dominating for 2 decades. Bill Belichick, obviously, the Patriots dynasty, walking out of there with 6 Super Bowl rings. The contributions are priceless. And it's the end of an era. It's a sad but celebratory moment. And it takes me back to a quote that I know most famously from The Office, but I'm sure it's more famous from somewhere else, or it's been created and referenced a few different times. But it takes me back to a quote that I remember too well. 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I wish there was a way to know you were in the good old days before you actually left, because we've passed the good old days at this point, at least the good old days and the golden days of coaching. Don't get me wrong. There's some amazing coaches across the sport of football. There's still some legendary figures, legendary icons, but in terms of absolute sheer and utter domination, and I'm talking like nobody will ever reach the level that these 3 coaches have reached combined. If I had to rank the coaches, I think it'd be really hard to say, because each guy, like I mentioned, had contributions in different facets due to different factors, different organizations. A lot of surrounding circumstance impacted how well these guys performed as coaches, right? And it's hard to quantify exactly how much this most recent wave of retirements and coaches, it's hard to quantify how much these coaches actually contributed to the sport. It's impossible. And I'm not going to attempt to quantify what Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, and Bill Belichick contributed to the sport of football. But what I can say with absolute certainty is you will never, ever, ever have a coach that had as much success as Bill Belichick did in the NFL ever again. You won't have it. It won't happen. 6 Super Bowls, it won't happen again. 7 national championships from a college football coach, absolutely unequivocally will never happen again. It will never happen again. In today's day and age of college football, the transfer portal, NIL, scholarships, recruiting, high school, NFL influence, it is impossible to replicate what Nick Saban did as a head coach in college football. It will never be repeated. I said the same thing about a handful of guys that retired in certain sports with guys like Albert Pujols or Miguel Cabrera in baseball, Tom Brady as a quarterback in football. You know, you've got some guys like LeBron when he ends up retiring, where it's the type of career, it's the type of contributions that will never happen again. Albert Pujols finished his career with 700 career homers, 3,000 career hits. I said that will never happen again from any player in the history of the sport. It won't happen. It'll never happen again. 7 national championships from a head coach in college football from one guy. It will never happen again. Nick Saban is the last coach in the history of college football to finish his career with 7 national championships as a head coach. He is the last one to do that. It will never be replicated. It will never be repeated. Bill Belichick is the last coach in the history of the NFL to finish his career as a head coach with 6 Super Bowls. It will never happen again. It will never, ever, ever happen again in the history of college and the NFL. As time's progressed, as things have gone on, as people leave with free agency in the NFL, people transfer in college football, money, NIL, recruiting, professional influence, sponsorships, big markets, small markets, instant gratification, have to win now. Patience is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The leashes are getting shorter and shorter for these coaches. Nobody will even last that long. You can have a head coach who wins 3 championships in 5 years. And I'm not saying that is impossible. That in and of itself is incredibly difficult. But you can have a head coach that goes championship, second place finish, championship, second place finish, championship. And then in that 5th year, that 6th year, they finish under 500, have a couple of untimely injuries. Then somebody leaves and circumstances happen. And then a couple key pieces get moved and then they miss on a draft pick. And then the year after that, they finish under 500. People are going to be asking to fire him. Like that's the day and age that we live in. The leash of Bill Belichick, the leash that Nick Saban got, rightfully earned, but will never be as long in the history of both professional and college sports. They deserved the leash that they got because of the established success that those guys repeated over and over and over again, but we'll never, ever, ever see a caliber of coach and the level of success that was produced by Nick Saban in college football and Bill Belichick in the NFL. It will never be repeated. And I think that is probably the most important thing to reflect on in this entire situation. You could talk about who's going to replace him. You can talk about the competition in both the NFL and college. People, like celebrate, the Alabama dynasty's over, Patriots dynasty's over, all this and that. Understandably, people can be a little bit excited about that. I get it because it's going to make the playing field a little bit more level. I think the fact that a coach retiring is celebratory for other teams and other potential competitors of those retired coaches, the fact that other teams are celebrating the retirement, celebrating the mutual parting of ways, shows you how dominant and how lethal those coaches were when they were coaching. That, to me, speaks volumes. It's priceless. Auburn was rolling Toomer's corner after the announcement of Nick Saban retiring. If that doesn't tell you how lethal and how deadly that guy was at coaching and how much of a juggernaut program he built, I don't know what to tell you. People celebrating Belichick leaving New England, the dynasty of the Patriots officially being over, even though, it was probably over with as soon as Brady left. Regardless, people celebrating that shows you how lethal Bill Belichick was as a head coach in the NFL. Congratulations to all of them. Unbelievable careers, unbelievable coaching.